New court filings confirm Vince McMahon's involvement leading up to the WrestleMania 39 main card. You see, we all know Vince McMahon right now he's been in hot water for a long time, and the case is still ongoing. Recent revealings have showed um, what exactly Vince McMahon was up to, and also up until WrestleMania, how much power he had over some of the storylines that were going in to WrestleMania. I have these notes here, and it's been a very interesting trial to take place and to watch along because there's so many different things that are coming out, uh, and this has been recent. This month we've seen a lot of different reports come out, but it seems like the text messages here that were leaked, um, they're proof of what fans had already, like they already suspected, and that was Vince McMahon didn't really leave the company at the time they felt like he left. So the documents show that Endeavor executives, they predicted that Vince would retire, then return, then sell the company to them, all on the same day he stepped down. Vince and Ari Emanuel were in contact during the retirement, arranging dinners and meetings. Vince was texting Nick Khan about WrestleMania Creative in 2023, contradicting public claims that he wasn't involved. Okay, so the retirement, the return, the sale, it all looks like it was a series of events, and more like a pre-wired sequence. The lawsuit claims that Vince engineered the Endeavor deal to keep power, not to maximize shareholder value, and these texts don't prove that. But they absolutely support the idea that the path was already paved for Vince. Now, fans were told that Triple H was in full control. Now, that was the narrative, the public narrative that they were sharing. It wasn't the real narrative. Executives told outlets like CNBC that Vince was not involved. Behind the scenes, Vince was asking about Roman and Cody's creative direction for WrestleMania. And we have to sit here and think to ourselves, if Endeavor executives, if they knew that Vince would return, if Vince and Ari were coordinating during his retirement, if creative conversations were happening, was WWE truly in a post-Vince era? Or were we just told that he was gone from the company? You see, this reveals a lot of different things. I mean, it also states the fact that Vince McMahon never truly had left when we thought he had left, and he did have creative control over some of the matches and the creative direction around some of the matches that were going to take place at WrestleMania. I mean, there was a feeling that I had in my mind, and that was that Vince couldn't actually leave. Like, he wasn't going to leave until the lawsuit came out and we saw what was being said in the lawsuit, and then, that was, at that point, he had to step down. But it felt as if, it felt as if he was still around, though. Like, even for WrestleMania 39, I know a lot of people were upset with the booking of that show. Like the main event of that night, we saw Cody and we saw Roman, and I firmly believe, regardless of whoever was booking, whether it was Vince that may had the final say or it was Nick Khan or Triple H had assumed the role. I don't think Triple H had at that time, even though that was the narrative that was being shared. I feel like the direction they went in was the right direction, and how they came out of that night, because we knew what was going to happen the year after. I mean, that was Triple H. That was all Triple H. Triple H had the say over what was going to happen at WrestleMania 40, and we can firmly say that WrestleMania was the very first WrestleMania of the Triple H era officially under his watch. Now, a lot of people are going to come out here and say, well, the fact that Vince was still around, like, you can see, like, they're comparing the product under Vince McMahon and what it was like with him versus what it's like with Triple H. And there's always this debate that will exist simply because 2025 didn't seem to be the year that fans had expected, especially after the year we had in 2024. And it's always going to come up. Who was the better booker? Was it Vince? Was it Triple H? And people will always sit here and say, because Vince McMahon was around for as long as he was, there's more that you can nitpick, and there's also more that you could say that was great about what he did, because he's got, what, 40 years under his belt. Triple H, I want to say he's got, what, 10 years maybe? If you think about him being back in NXT, which really were his glory days, and then coming to the main roster, taking over last year officially. It's just not a fair debate to have, because the two guys that we're talking about have not held power of the most important entity of WWE, and that is the Raw brand. They haven't held that amount of power, each of them, for the same amount of time. So it's hard to critique them. Now, I will say one thing. Triple H, it seemed like if Vince really was around and he had left, once the lawsuit had come out and he had to step down, it almost seemed like he had left Triple H in a better place with all of his, the creative that they had put together up until that point, and the creative plan that had come out of WrestleMania. It almost seemed like he had left them in a good place, because, I mean, let's face it, when Roman Reigns came on the scene, they started the whole bloodline saga. That was what was feeding families. Like, that was what was putting food on the table for everybody in the locker room. That was the show, SmackDown, that was the show to watch, to see the bloodline. So that was all Vince. That was all Vince. So really, when you look at it, I'm not saying that Vince is a better booker than Triple H. I'm looking at it from this storyline only. When Vince left, Triple H had everything that was, that had happened up until that point. He had it all, and he just had to work with it, and that's why they put on an amazing WrestleMania 40 main event. I thought it was incredible, and we got to see the true colors of Triple H and his booking when a storyline is complete, it's over with. What do we do after that? Where do we go from here? They didn't do so much afterwards. I mean, we saw Cody Rhodes win the title. Ever since then, there's been ups, there's been downs, but it's been a steady decline, because we haven't seen a lot of impactful storytelling. I mean, John Cena, right? John Cena was around and did his whole year-long retirement tour, and eventually ended up retiring on December 13th. And there was a lot of ups and downs. I mean, these guys, they wanted to make a great moment in Cena's retirement run, and they ended up doing so, but there was no follow through. And it seems like we've seen Triple H, when he's on his own to make these storylines, there's always this sort of like follow through that's missing. And to be transparent with you, I don't think anybody really wants Vince McMahon back. Of course, this shows us that he was still around. He was booking the main decisions. He was making the main decisions, and he was still in communication with Nick Khan heading into 2023's WrestleMania. Again, it's not to say that simply because of a few things, having Vince back would improve the product tremendously, but it's also not to say that Triple H, as the creative booker, is just as great as we thought he was. And this kind of reveals it. These text messages kind of reveals it. It's almost like Vince McMahon was covering up for Triple H, where Triple H wasn't the guy that was able to be the leader in charge at that point in time. Based off of what we're seeing here. But it's interesting news, and with a lawsuit like that is of this magnitude, there's going to be a lot more information that's going to come out about the situation with WWE back when Vince was still around and just before he was about to leave. And whenever that comes out, I will be here to look at it, to address it, to talk about it with you guys. If you guys have any thoughts on how Triple H has done this year and what your hopes are for 2026, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Let me know, and I would love to read them and be able to comment back to you. I love to read comments, and I love to engage with everybody who's engaging with this content here. Thank you, guys. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.